So we are excited to kick off Social Innovation Summit. I am honored to be on the stage with Mario and Emily today. They have incredible stories that I thought would be great to share with you. But first, just a quick check in the room. How many people know City Year in the room? Good. Do we have some core members, some Americorps alumni in the room? I can see most of the hands. Good. All right, come on. You know, you're supposed to answer with the fired up. Let's go. Are we fired up in the room today? Well, we have been fortunate at Comcast to work with City Year for close to 20 years now. So in fact, this year we sponsored our 100th team. And over the course of that experience, we get to meet great people like Mario and Emily. So for those of you who are not as familiar with City Year, or Americorps in general, City Year purposely selects high-need, lower-income schools across the country. In fact, there are 3,000 core members right now in over 327 schools in 28 cities across the country. And basically, any of us who've walked into a school, a high-need school before, know that there are not enough resources. Our teachers, our administrators are not equipped to prepare our students for the future, our children for competing in the 21st century economy and to be the leaders that we need. And City Year is bringing young, excited, and energetic core members into schools to help improve those students' outcomes. So they're cheerleaders, they're champions, they're role models for young people, and it's an incredible experience. But it doesn't stop there. So I thought what we talk a little bit today about is sort of life after service and how it really shaped the perspectives of our two panels today. So Emily, I'm going to start with you. You woke up one day and you said, I'm going to sign up for service year or for City Year. How did that happen?
No, I was in college and was graduated and just had no direction. And somebody said, you should do City Year. And the website said, get up, get coffee, and change the world. And I was like, that seems cool. And I just...
That could work in your schedule?
Yeah, and I interviewed and luckily got accepted, and so that was it.
And so Mario, when you signed up, what were you thinking about? Like, what did you believe about service that helped you get started?
So I actually worked with a City Year AmeriCorps member when I was in high school. And so when I was 20 in post 9/11 America, it was 2002, I was trying to figure out, well, what do I do? What's my call to action? I didn't want to go, to the Army. And then when I saw these kind of yellow buzzing jackets in San Jose, I was like, oh, I remember that dude that I worked with when I was in high school. Maybe I could do something like that. I could work with kids. I walked in and they just happened to be on this huge hiring. And then, 6 weeks later, I'm serving on this diverse team and trying to figure out my way through a really hard, difficult service year.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the diverse team. I mean, what are some of those skills you picked up in that year that you are still using today?
Yeah, it's working with people that are very different. I was a kid from the east side of San Jose, so I'm just down the street. And I was put on a team with a black woman from Atlanta, a white woman from Indiana, and a white guy from Orange County. And so they were all serving in my neighborhood and my community. And so I had to figure out, how do I fit in all of this? And how do I kind of raise the voices that are important to me? And sorting through all that is complicated. We're identity politics and all that stuff, back then. So I still carry that every day in every meeting that I go to today.
And definitely more people can benefit from that. I mean, Emily, what was challenging about that year for you?
City Year changed my life. I think, you can read a lot about education equity and poverty and the issues that our country faces, but when you're sort of full-time, in it is really hard. And it's really hard to sort of wake up every day and sort of commit to that work. It's very inspiring, but I think, and learning that this is the most important thing that we can be doing, is just being all in on trying to solve these issues facing our communities.
So some people have this perception that if you're signing up for this service year, you can afford to do that. You're coming from higher income background. You're doing this to check the box for whatever it is you need to do next. What were some of the myths that you were able to dispel through your service at City Year?
Yeah. I was excited for a paycheck. I was like, yeah. Consistency, because again, I was a 20-year-old kid working multiple jobs to kind of make ends meet for myself. And
did you think other people with your same background would be there at City Year?
I was hoping. And there was a group of us, but definitely not enough representation. And I think to kind of getting in the mix of it, and because I only served at City or San Jose, in my neighborhood, for 6 months, and then I was able to go and serve in Philadelphia, and then later open up Los Angeles. And what I noticed is that this uptick of representation from my community, which is amazing, but it's still not nearly enough. We need more brown and black men in our community doing the work, because we're the ones that most at the intersections and most we're being served, and so we need to make sure that representation is in our house.
Absolutely, and while it's been a focus for City Year, it's still about 3/4 women, although 40% are first-time college graduates. And then what are some of the other unexpected things that happened throughout that year? Emily, if you could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say to me, "Oh, you're so nice. You're like working with kids, right?" And they kind of made it seem like it wasn't serious work. And so I think the myth that I would try to dispel is, it is the most, I think, one of the best leadership development programs in the country. And I learned way more than all my other friends who went into sort of different spaces, and sort of where my sort of trajectory of what I learned and who I became was because of my core year. And I think that that type of leadership development experience is not everywhere.
And some of those people you knew back then who took different paths, do you think they can appreciate that now, or is it really about doing the work that changed your perspective?
I mean, I think they appreciate it now. I think at the time, especially that was early 2000s. Now national service is much more talked about, but especially back then it was kind of this different thing. So. Yeah,
everyone that I spoke to, I had multiple mentors telling me that no, this is for what people do when they don't know what to do with their lives.
Right.
Well, so maybe you should, Mario, but.
They were trying to tell you something.
Yeah, I think they're trying to say something. They're like, no, go to college, do this, and so. And it's still the case. I work with young people. I know there's some people that are just not ready. They don't want to go. They don't have the money. They're trying to figure out how to do the next step. And I'm just Americorps. Have you talked about City Year? Let me tell you about NCCC. And then the pushback they're getting from their community, from their counselors, from their parents. I mean, it's for my community of color, it's also not just the fact that they need to make sure that they're going to stay on track to get that social capital that they need, but also can they afford either a pre or post actually do a year of just wasting time, and so that's it's one of those things I'm just trying to this is an accelerator. It's something that's gonna kind of take you to the next level and not stop you or divert you. And if it does divert you, it's probably for the best reason possible.
Definitely, and that sort of brings me to what I think is great about both of your experiences, which is what you're doing today. So. Close to half of City Year or Americorps alumni are still engaged in some way civically, which is huge, and 30% sort of stay in the government, nonprofit sector, civil society, and as many young people that are frustrated about what's happening, whether it's inequity, poverty, et cetera, we know that many of them don't actually sort of step up and make the commitment to serve. That said, you've had an incredible life post City Year. So Mario, talk a little bit about Big Citizen Hub, which you call the Little League of Civic Action.
Yes, the Little League for Civic Action. The idea is, I was 20 when I had this really amazing experience of trying to facing myself and facing others while trying to figure out how to work and shifting my lenses on how I look at the world, and that changed the trajectory of the next 15 years. So what if I did that when I was 11? How different would my life be? We as a society will put our young people in soccer or t-ball and help them develop sports skills all the way until they're post-college, but we don't do that with our activists. And so Big Citizen Hub is trying to build a pipeline of change makers, changes that are ready, willing, and mobilizing to do something.
And that obviously seems directly connected to your experience at City Year. But what did you learn at City Year that made starting Big Citizen Hub possible?
It was the how, right? It was how to sort through community, how to organize, how to work with people from different parts of different sectors, how to put them together, how to connect. That was all the logistics of getting it together. But when it came to getting the first 75 middle school students to commit to something, it was also how do I put the flags up of saying this is for you. You should be. This is your community. This is your time. I got all of that from my time of working with just amazing, fantastic people like Emily, who were just inspiring and ready to go. So that was a couple of things that I took away.
And I know you're working in Boyle Heights and other communities, but similar to the challenge you talked about in recruiting people to national service, I mean, how are some of those conversations, right? You know, you're sort of talking to parents about this can be a career, but for many people, especially if it's a first generation or no one has been to college yet, service feels like you're choosing to take a path that doesn't have economic opportunity at the end of that road. So how do you sort of negotiate that conversation in some of our communities?
Well, you know, it's maybe an unspoken of. You know, maybe we don't speak about it. We're just like in the now, right? It's going to be how are we present. But also, my team and I look at it also as like, you know, it is an imperative. You know, for our families that are maybe mixed status or have challenges with immigration nowadays, you know, we're noticing that students are shifting or changing their own they're starting to heal and or change what's happening within them because they're given some agency to do some work in that space. So we also see that our work in the community and on these issues is also going to be very healing for individuals to give them some power back in kind of changing with the tide of what's happening in their own world.
Especially given what we know about trauma in high poverty communities as well. And so Emily, you actually took a path into starting New Politics, but tell everybody a little bit about that journey so far.
Yeah, so the co-founder of City Year, Alan Casey, ran for the US Senate in 2009 when Ted Kennedy passed away, and Alan's very much like believes in young people and they can do anything, and so he was like, you're gonna work on my campaign. And I was like, I don't do campaigns, I've never done it. And he's like, you'll be fine, you'll figure it out. And so I talk about that experience like the Matrix where you swallow the red pill, because I knew nothing about campaigns, and it was like this parallel world like opened up before me that I never knew existed. And you know, through that experience, I realized how broken the political system is and that it's counterintuitive and really difficult for transformative leaders to successfully run. And so I've been around my whole life, professional life, with City Year, City Year Corps members and alumni and Americorps and Peace Corps and military veterans. And I was like, these are the people that we need in politics. And you know, they're not running. We have the lowest number of congressional members in history. Less than 18% of our Congress has service backgrounds. You know, we used to have about 75, 80%. And so,
what do you think prompted that shift?
You know, I think we had the greatest generation. So we were sort of at our peak after World War II when, you know, everybody went into public service and politics and it was seen as public service. And I think 70s and the 80s, you know, we sort of saw that decline in politics being public service. And I think a lot of us, and I did it too, we self-select out of politics because we see it as the antithesis culturally of who we are as service people. And we make that false choice. Well, I'm going to make change doing youth work and social impact work, and I'm not going to engage in that political space, right? I think that's why. And so I created New Politics because elected leaders are the most powerful people in our country, right? They make a lot of decisions about our communities. And so, you know, and I met Mario for the first time. I was reminding him when we met for the first time, I was like, you have to run for office. And he was like, what? But I'm still trying to, I want a campaign to recruit Mario, so Mario will run one day. So now that you all know that as well, we can all help.
Vote for Mario.
So yeah, we need more leaders like Mario, you know, in elected positions of city council, school committee, Congress, and onward.
When we were talking earlier, you were talking about the number of people who just said you were crazy when you wanted to go down this path. And you know, you had a few trusted sources that thought otherwise, but you admit the work is hard. So what's difficult about, we know how upset people are with where our country is today. What's difficult about getting them to think about running for office or to be part of the political machine?
I mean, I think there's significant barriers to entry. So, you know, funding, the know-how of like, what does this space look like? How do I think about it? What's my pathway? Can I financially afford it? You know, a lot of families can't afford to leave work for a year to run for Congress, right? So it's all those challenges that we really try to work through and help unpack and help solve for people. So, yeah.
And how are you pulling together those resources to support somebody, you know, if I'm thinking about this might be a path for me and I want to come out and reach out to New Politics, what's that process?
Yeah, so first we sort of take you through, we actually, City Year's Idealist Journey, we sort of use in the political space, and we call it the candidate's journey, but we help people get clear about who they are and why they want to run. And then we're like a Y Combinator, but for political candidates. So we help incubate and sort of and amplify and build a village. And so we help kind of bring people around them who can all do this together, because it's not just about us, it's about how do we build that village for our servant leaders. So yeah.
And so both of you have chosen nonprofits that focuses on sort of younger, potentially disengaged or seemingly disengaged communities and sort of bringing them about for change. What can baby boomers and other generations do to support this population? Where do you feel, what are the barriers they're putting up that's keeping you from doing your work?
Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Did you hear that?
I'm just kidding. It's just, we need more seats at the table, which means we need people to step away from the table. I need representation, which means that someone might need to leave the table so I could sit, or the people in my community to sit. And it's this Generation Z is on fire, and so we're going to have to get out of their way, including me.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, our pilot beta test was a Marine named Seth Moulton, and so I had recruited him to run, and we took out an 18-year Democratic, congressman in a Democratic primary, which no one in Massachusetts ever does, and they were just like, Seth needs to wait his turn. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, this dude's been here for 18 years and he's complacent. We don't need to wait our turn. Our turn is now, and so I think that I agree with Mario. It's our time.
So historically, national service or service in general has been an issue that both parties have really gotten behind in a big way. And so while there are definitely questions about funding, both parties are still very, very supportive. Can you talk a little bit about that, Emily, in your work and how that's helping move your agenda forward? Yeah,
I mean, we're bipartisan, so we help both Republicans and Democrats. And we believe that no political party has a monopoly on servant leadership. It's, everyone should be that way. And so national service, I think, has enjoyed that bipartisanship because it is about country first, and it is about all of us and our communities. So, yeah.
And Mario, what's your take on that? Why do you think it's in this day and age where so many things are divisive, that service is something that a lot of people can get behind?
Because everyone wants to do good, right? I really believe that, and I think every person has the in their soul and their being, they want to do good for other people, and oftentimes it's hard to see each other as humans and full people. Mm-hmm. But when we all come to a space together, it is common ground, and that's what national service did for me. That's what I hope Big Citizen Dubs does for our young people. That's what Emily's trying to do in the political landscape, and so it just makes sense.
So maybe then a great way to end is with the challenge that Zeev set out. So Emily, what motivates you to keep this work going?
I mean, I think it's an honor and a privilege to the servant leaders, that the Marios of the world who can be political leaders, and I think that inspires me, that our country can live up to the potential of who we can be. So yeah.
Mario,
what's getting you up every day?
The 200 young people that show up on a Saturday and hang out from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, mm-hmm. just banging the concrete, trying to make it happen. They do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Emily Cherniack, Mario Fedelin, change makers. Thank you for enjoying our conversation.